couldn't figure out what your purpose was? Have you allowed your curiosity to lead you to something you're passionate about, and allow that thing that you're passionate about to speak to you in a way that tells you whether or not it's your purpose? Have you allowed yourself to be vulnerable enough to really give your intuition a chance? Or is your ego too loud? When I say who you are, it's how you're showing up in the world, not who you really are internally. And when I say that there's a gap, I mean, what is the gap between how you're showing up in the world and who you are internally? When I say who you want to be, I mean, do you want to be that person that you are internally? Meaning, do you want the person you are internally to match the person that you show up as in the world? You didn't exercise any form of action immediately after the inception of that thought, or immediately after making a decision to implement this into your life. You didn't do anything to move you forward in that direction. You just said, oh, this is dope, I'm going to do this from now on. Did you schedule it? Before that, did you understand why you were going to do that? Did you say, okay, this resonates with me because of this. This is what this means to me. This is why I'm going to incorporate this into my life. This is how I'm going to incorporate this into my life. This is when I'm going to incorporate this into my life. This is how often I'm going to incorporate this into my life. And then do it. To some people, that may be perceived as unreasonable, but unreasonable people run the world. Unreasonable people run the world because unreasonable people run themselves. You prime yourself to have a positive perspective on life based on the positive outlook. It's not a conscious decision in every moment of every day. If you spend your entire day with negative self-talk, that's self-abuse. That's a form of emotional abuse to yourself. Thinking that you're not worth it. Thinking that your life is just a waste. Thinking that you're an accident. Thinking no one loves you. Thinking you're not lovable. Thinking you're not worthy of anything of real value, and so you don't value your life. If you look around and all you see is domestic violence and people fighting and relationships not working and people cheating on each other and people walking out on each other and there's no trust, there's no loyalty, there's constant betrayal, there's all of these bastard children, you may feel like you're unworthy of a family. Why even entertain the idea of a family? There are people who have experienced that, and so to an extent they may think that they're cursed. And they say things like, this legacy is stopping with me.
In the beginning, I said like it's the Bible.
There was darkness.
You are kind of in the dark.
Yeah.
Really. As you said, young men don't really know how to process their emotions. What do you think why that is? What the repercussions are, and how you can, as a young man, start making shifts in order to change that for yourself?
We're being conditioned almost immediately to shy away from the full range of our emotions. So there's some emotions that are made available to us by society, and there's some emotions that are encouraged to be muted by society. And as a child, you don't really know how to weigh the pros and cons of that. So ultimately what happens in a lot of instances is young boys are unable to be their full selves. So they have a challenge with growing up to be full humans, even-spirited, balanced individuals that understand how to process emotions because they've never been able to express the full range of emotion. So they have very little experience with it, and they have very little experience with how They have very little experience with the consequence of expressing a full range of emotion without an outburst. Right? Because oftentimes in trying to hold it in, it has to be released somewhere, somehow. So when society is telling you that it's wrong, how do you release it? Sometimes it's in the form of drug use. Sometimes it's in the form of being overly sexed. Sometimes it's in the form of being overly aggressive. Not because young boys care to be overly aggressive, but because they can't express sadness and have that actually be appreciated and welcomed and honored in a way that shows young boys how to manage that emotion and how to be exposed to this aspect of themselves. So because they've been conditioned to cut that aspect of self off, it comes out in different ways. And the ways that it comes out is not always productive. Sometimes, as counterintuitive as it may be, it comes out in the form of paralysis. It comes out in the form of stagnated energy, where a young boy becomes uncertain of his identity because subconsciously he understands that this is not really who he is, but doesn't know how to express the full range of who he is without expressing the full range of emotion that he has. So instead of acting out or acting outlandishly, the young boy may not do anything. It may come out in the form of nonchalance in general. Almost as if the young boy is numb. But what really happens, what that really means is it manifests itself in a form of worry. Right? Where that young boy is constantly overanalyzing things, trying to figure out how to be himself, trying to figure out how to express the full range of himself, trying to, thinking that there's somehow a loophole somewhere where he can really be, or his identity can really shine. Problem is, he doesn't really know who he is. Because he's never entertained the full range of self. And because of that, there's only but so many experiences, or there's only certain types of experiences you're going to have as a young boy. And so you end up having a partial identity, a partial experience, and thus a partial existence. Because if you're not expressing what society says is socially acceptable, then you pretty much don't express anything. So the consequence of that is not really living a full life, never really experiencing yourself. And for the people who act outlandishly or have those feelings of hurt, those feelings of sadness, those feelings of vulnerability being expressed in the form of aggression. You've seen that negativity attracts more negativity. Yeah. So that can lead to a host of different issues, a host of different circumstances that really show up as issues, like prison, like violence, right? And it's not always physical violence, meaning physical abuse. It could be mental abuse to the people around you. It could be emotional abuse to the people around you, emotional abuse to yourself. You can emotionally abuse yourself.
Can you give an example?
Absolutely. If you spend your entire day with negative self-talk, that's self-abuse. That's a form of emotional abuse to yourself. Thinking that you're not worth it. Thinking that your life is just a waste. Thinking that you're an accident. Thinking no one loves you. Thinking you're not lovable. Thinking you're not worthy of anything of real value. And so you don't value your life. You find that you put yourself in position for other people to potentially value you. But you don't necessarily value yourself. And you depend on external circumstance to validate your position. Your perception, rather, of yourself. If you look around and your life doesn't reflect that of a boss, whatever a boss may mean to you, you may think you're not capable of someday becoming one, or already being one, but exercising that capability so that you can actually manifest it in your life in a real way. If you look around and all you see is domestic violence and people fighting and relationships not working and people cheating on each other and people walking out on each other and there's no trust, there's no loyalty, there's constant betrayal, there's all of these bastard children, you may feel like you're unworthy of a family. Why even entertain the idea of a family? There are people who have experienced that, and so to an extent, they may think that they're cursed. And they say things like, this legacy is stopping with me. This issue is stopping with me. This is not a positive legacy to pass on. Some people feel like they don't have a gene pool that's worthy of being pushed into the future. They have no interest in having a child because they've seen nothing but issues associated with them and their family. And they feel like they're an extension of their family. And they don't like anything that they're seeing. So how could having a child somehow be a contribution to society? They don't think so. So they have no interest in procreating. Because of this negative self-talk. Because of the habit of using external circumstance to validate intrinsic value. That's an example of self-abuse. Physical self-abuse would be people who cut themselves. People who bang their head against the wall. People who burn themselves. People who use drugs excessively. People who drink excessively. people who engage in a lot of sexual activity unprotected with a multitude of different individuals. Poor hygiene is a form of physical neglect. Not caring. So, you can abuse yourself. And self-abuse can be the result of not knowing how to process your emotions.
So what would be a good first step to start processing your emotions in a healthy manner?
Think about what you think about. Think about what you think about what you think about. Think about how you feel. What are the consistent feelings that you have? Is it frustration? Is it annoyance? Is it happy? Like, what are the primary feelings that you have? And then back out the beliefs attached to the circumstances that you blame for those feelings. And then we can ask ourselves, what must we believe? Why do we believe that? Essentially, a situation is happening and is bringing you a negative feeling. And it's like, what must I believe in order to feel this way? But why do I believe this? Is this my belief? Or is it something that somebody else gave to me? Is this something that I adopted from my community? What do you consume? What are the things around you that reinforce these negative beliefs or these negative ideas? And I'm calling them negative because they don't serve you. These ideas that don't serve you in a positive way. Are you addicted to pain? Some people are synonymous with pain. Every time you speak to them, they're in pain. Whether physical or emotional. Whenever you are around them, everything about the experience is pain. Where you hang out. You hang out in environments where people are in pain. What kind of music you listen to? Music where people are expressing their pain. Why do you dress like that? Because, this is, I'm expressing a struggle. Why do you speak that way? There's so much pain in your voice here because I got a lot to be heard about. So the objective is to think critically about yourself. What does it mean to be you? Practically, not theoretically. Like, how do you show up every day? What are some of your habits? Why do you do those things? If you're a smoker, why you smoke? Do you not care about your body? Do you understand the negative implications that come along with smoking? Physically? If so, why do you do it? Why do you eat that way? Why do you not rest sufficiently? Why do you put yourself in extremely stressful situations repeatedly? reinforces the other. In a stressful situation, you're looking for some peace, you're looking for a distraction, you're looking for some pleasure, you're looking for something that's going to alter your state, something that's going to alter your mood. Maybe that's why you smoke so much. Not thinking clearly once you smoke, once you start drinking. Okay. Maybe that's why you eat that way. Maybe that's why you put yourself around these people, because they reinforce the idea of smoking, drinking, eating McDonald's again. Because the struggle is real. And the struggle is real. But suffering is a choice. You can be in pain, but suffering is a choice. Chronic pain that you can change is a choice. The first step is acknowledging choice and taking accountability for the choices that you make that may contribute to your current condition. Mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, and financially. Because that's what it comes down to, your actions. There's a science to achievement. There's a science to acquiring things in your life. There's a science to that. You can learn that. So if you don't have it, why don't you have it? You must have an interest in learning about it because it's there. That's not an art. Achievement is not an art.
What will be the next step?
Change. The next step, after you acknowledge the fact that you have choice and taking accountability for the choices that you make that contribute to your current circumstances, is choosing to do something differently. Making a different type of choice that is actually helpful, that's conducive to the future you say you want to have. Now, then it's what future do you want to have? You know not this one. So even if you don't have a vision for yourself, long term in your life, you may know, okay, I don't want to be an addict. That doesn't serve me at all. I don't want to be out of shape. That doesn't serve me at all. Right? I don't want to continue to have relationships with people who provide negative reinforcement for my poor decisions. That doesn't serve me at all. So you don't have to have a 20-year plan for your life in order to make different decisions. Because it's extremely hard to have that if you're constantly coming from a place of pain. Because you're not even thinking in abundance, you're thinking in lack. So whatever it is that you think is a goal that you should be shooting for at that moment, is probably the low end of what you're actually capable of. And it may not be inspiring enough for you to actually even care to achieve it. Because subconsciously you know, this is not really me reaching for my potential. You want to have a compelling future. And sometimes the compelling future is just a question more than how we think about goals traditionally. For example, I wonder what life would be like without weed. I wonder what life would be like if I wasn't a sex addict. I think it would be better. I think if I took this energy and I dedicated it to something else, For example, my fitness, my physical fitness. I think I can make some progress in this space, and this will actually be helpful in my life long term. Let me try that for 30 days and see what that feels like. It doesn't always have to be, I want to stop doing this so I can reach this goal of buying a big house and having a big family, etc. Sometimes it's curiosity that's compelling enough for a person to shift.
You said there was a science to success, to achievement.
Mm-hmm.
Could you briefly lay out like a little blueprint?
Science to achievement depends on what you want to do. But for example, if you want to be a doctor, there are steps that you take that are clearly defined steps to becoming a doctor, regardless of what kind of doctor you want to become. Let's say you want to become a pediatrician. There are clearly defined steps toward becoming a pediatrician. If you want to be a lawyer, it's the same, right? If you want to be an entrepreneur, to some extent, it's the same. Whether you're a successful entrepreneur, that's a different story. But there are even steps to that. Some people would argue that they're loose, right? The path is not so clearly defined. But if you want to start a business, there's a very structured way to go about starting a business. Right? You have a product or a service. You have marketing, you have advertising, you have sales. That's typically the core of a business. Beyond that, you have finance, you may have some R&D. You may have customer service. But this is typically the different components of an organization. Those are well known. What does it mean to have a good product? It means to have a product that really services the ideal customer in a way that's life-changing for the better. What is the real issue that the customer is having? And are you locked in and focused on that with your product or service? Not a product or service that you love, but one that the customer can really appreciate. And build your business around that. But there's a science to that. There's a science to finance. There's a science to health. We don't follow the science a lot of the times, but we want the health.
Is there a way if you are feeling almost like inadequate to your goals?
Absolutely. Why do you have those goals? It always comes back to the same thing. Why do you have this goal? What is your why? This is my goal. Why is this your goal? And is there another way for you to do this very same thing that you're actually more passionate about and equipped to do? Not just something that's a good idea. Some people are those type of entrepreneurs. It doesn't matter what business they work in. They love the game. They love business. Not everybody's in it for the game. Not everybody loves the game. Some people want that thing. They want $1 million. That's why they're in business. They're not in the business for the game. They want a nice house, they want a Ferrari. That's why they're in it. Some people are in it for the game. Some people are in it for the mission. Whatever the mission may be. Some people want to feed 50 million people in 3 years. That's what they're in it for. That's the mission. So the question is, why are you in it? What are you doing it for? What's the objective? Why? Where does your passion for this thing come from? It's nice to have a good idea. But the moment you try to put that into motion, you're going to start to feel resistance. What do you have that's going to push you through that resistance? That's why your why is important. And it's challenging because your why is confronting. So oftentimes people try to skip it because it may not be a good why. And if it's not a good why, does that mean that you're not really who you say you are? If this thing that you supposedly wanted so much is rooted in something so shallow, then what does that say about you? Sometimes it's avoiding the confrontation of self that keeps a person from actually doing something. It's not really that they're not capable. But it's that they're afraid of their own power, so they don't explore it enough.
So you're saying that it might seem superficial, but really on the inside there's something going on that challenges their self-perception.
No, what I'm saying is, chances are you're not really being who you are. That's why this thing that you say you want to do is rooted in something superficial. But if you really took the time out to confront yourself and understand how powerful you really are as a person, you would then grant yourself access to understanding that you don't want to do this thing. You may have only wanted to do this thing because you think that it's cool or that it's different. But it's not really something that you could really stand behind wholeheartedly. Perhaps it's this other thing that you're running from because it doesn't sound as cool. But it actually has a why for you that has more substance. And in order to actually introduce yourself to that person that fulfills this mission based on this why, you would have to change a lot of your habits and shift, which will shift a lot of your choices and alter your life. And that's a very confrontational experience.
Have you been through such experience?
Of course. Moving to the Netherlands. Being the first person in my family to go to college and finish. Studying engineering. Being the only person in the community that I knew of that had a quote-unquote real job. Not always choosing violence. Being married. Being monogamous. Choosing to confront myself, go to therapy. Go to multiple types of therapy. Trying different types of healing mechanisms. When just therapy itself is being scrutinized. Yeah, there's this shift to an extent in culture where now we begin to see that therapy shouldn't be demonized. But there is still this undertone of, that's for crazy people. There's still this resistance that's there. Not as much as it once was, but it's still there.
How does that self-confrontation look like?
Dark. Lonely. Confusing. Uncertain. It's an experience that brings about a host of mixed emotions, which is a process that allows you to be whole.
Kind of like going back to what you said about men only being able to express one part of them.
Yes. Yes.
Themselves.
In order to confront yourself, you have to confront your whole self, or you're not really doing it. What are those emotions that you push down? Right? And then covered it with all these other things to try to help you forget that you pushed it down. Right? For example, something happens in your life is very hurtful. You acknowledge that it's very hurtful. But you never really leaned into how you felt about it and given that emotion its proper place. Instead, because you're an achiever, I am. You start thinking about all of the positive things that came from that experience. And you decorate that experience that brought about a negative feeling with the wisdom that was acquired from that experience. Right? But it doesn't change the fact that it hurt your feelings. It doesn't change the fact that it was a traumatic experience. And it doesn't change the fact that you haven't actually properly given that emotion a place to be experienced. So granted, yes, you got all these great things from it. You got this wisdom from it. But there's also a shadow side to wisdom. And you haven't shined the light on that shadow.
Can you talk a bit more about the shadow aspect of it?
Yeah, the pain. Daddy left. Yo, I'm happy he left. It helped me grow up faster. It helped me get exposure to things that I probably wouldn't have been exposed to so blatantly had he been around. It helped me to have to face real life at an earlier age. So now I'm a bit more seasoned at this thing that we call reality. But I don't handle it well because I move throughout the world with abandonment issues. Why? because daddy left. That's an example.
Once you recognize that within yourself, like, all right, I got abandonment issues. How do you, is that just like a matter of like, all right, that's it, except with this, or can you do certain things to move past those?
Depends on the person. Perhaps some people can do a better job at healing themselves without much external influence. They don't need to go to therapy, for example. Some people need to go to therapy for a year. Some people go to therapy for 10 years. In addition to other things. In addition to meditation. In addition to acupuncture. In addition to ayahuasca. In addition to TRE.
You think these things are helpful?
For some people they are.
You think these things can be harmful?
Some people would argue that ayahuasca could be harmful. But the rest of them, no, I don't think so. Ayahuasca, you throw up and you get sick and etc. Supposedly. That happens to some people. So perhaps they feel like they've been harmed by the experience. Perhaps that can be debated. But the other ones, no. I don't think therapy is harmful, for example.
Are there no cons besides the money? Are there, you see no cons with a...
Cons to therapy? No, but there are things that can feel like a con, like more therapy. You go to therapy, or you think you're going to therapy for one thing, then you end up realizing there are 10 other issues, 10 other mental strains and emotional strains that you're dealing with. For example, it's not just that daddy left, it's that mommy was an alcoholic. Excuse me. Your brother got killed. Your sister died from cancer. Or just the impact that daddy leaving had on your family. That impact that daddy leaving had on a family can be a traumatizing experience. Maybe that was a straw that broke the camel's back. Maybe that was the reason why mommy started drinking so much. Maybe that's the reason why your brother was just like, yo, I gotta figure something out. I'm the man of the house now. When Al got involved in things that he probably shouldn't have got involved in, and lost his life at an early age. Or just didn't know how to process the emotion. And it came out in the form of aggression. He joined the gang. That led to an early demise. Sister had a lot of anger, had a lot of stress, had a lot of confusion, hurt, bottled in. It led to disease. You were able to lean on the fact that you were intelligent. So you took all that emotion and you put it into your school work. You were able to become a doctor and do these great things. Doesn't mean the pain is not there. Doesn't mean that it doesn't show up in other ways. Doesn't mean that it won't show up some way in the future. That could be extremely detrimental.
Important is to put everything into perspective when it comes to family trauma.
It's important to put things in perspective when it comes to anything. I wouldn't say one is over the other, because everything builds on everything else. Oftentimes, it starts with family trauma. Many of the issues that a person could face later on in life could come from the experiences of their young childhood. Which can be tied directly back to the household. It's important to keep that in perspective and understand how it can influence your life by giving you a certain belief system, which informs your choices and informs how you're going to feel about the consequence of your choices, or what you have choice. Meaning, you can choose to look at it in a positive or a negative way, but that's mental. That doesn't change the feeling. You can rationalize it. You can say, oh, this is the positive thing that came from that. And you can get a positive feeling from thinking like that. But that doesn't undo the negative feeling you had when it happened initially.
So how do you process that negative feeling?
Going toward it. Going toward it. You process that negative feeling by acknowledging that it's there. And understanding that by saying that there's something positive that came from the experience doesn't change that doesn't change the fact that the negative feeling is there. Negative feeling is still there. Because that's what impacts your subconscious, not your thoughts. Something happens, you have a strong feeling attached to whatever it is that you're thinking, or whatever it is that circumstance was. That's what's going to alter your subconscious. Not the day that you sit back and think, oh, yeah, this was actually good for me. That doesn't have the same impact. So if you want to change, you have to now reprogram your subconscious, which takes some deep work. And different things work for different people.
Can you elaborate on that deep work? So let's say something happens, you have a very negative emotion attached to it.
Deep work could potentially be positive affirmation, incantation, breath work, meditation, TRE, therapy, Psych-K, psychological kinesiology, almost a form of hypnosis that helps you to reprogram your subconscious. EDMR, same thing, right? These different methods that help you to do that. Prayer, a lot of people turn to prayer.
And what is theory?
TRE is trauma release exercises. It's pretty much balancing the energy in your body by allowing yourself to allow that energy in your body to roam freely in a way that releases the trauma from your body. Because your body is what holds the memory of your experiences. So the trauma from those experiences shows up in your body.
The other day, I had this girl on my IG, and she's like a professional dancer.
Yeah.
And she was like, apparently twerking is like a way of like releasing trauma.
Dancing is a form of therapy. It's been that way. Yeah, that's been known throughout certain cultures for a very long time. So that's why in New Orleans, one of the things they do when a person dies and they're taking the casket to the burial site is everyone who is a part of that experience or a part of that ceremony dances all the way from the initial point, the funeral home, to the actual gravesite, playing music, chanting, yelling, dancing the whole way through because it's a form of release, which in itself is therapy. So if that's what you mean, or if that's what she meant, then it makes sense.
Nah, she was very adamant about like the hip shaking and everything.
She's correct, because TRE is rooted in your root chakra, which is in your hip region. So it starts from there and goes throughout the rest of your body, wherever the trauma is. So yes. The root chakra is important. And understanding that from a physical therapy perspective in context of this conversation, she's onto something.
Yeah. Dudes out here twerking.
Sometimes in doing TRE, you feel like you're twerking.
I'm all for it. Because it's funny, it's like, because it has such a different connotation, twerking.
Yeah.
And she was trying to like make people like aware.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah. What I was thinking is like, a lot of people, you said like, things could be, get placed in the subconscious through emotion. Like a very like impactful moment, which you feel.
Strong emotion.
Right.
Attached to that moment.
But people are a lot more susceptible to negative emotion.
Yes.
Doesn't that kind of make people bound or almost like programmed to have not a dysfunctional subconscious, but one that doesn't really serve them in their highest form?
It gives a person access to be served at the highest level. Can't really be serviced at the highest level if you're not alive to experience it. So your subconscious being programmed to look for what's wrong in society or what's wrong in the environment is designed that way because it's designed to keep you alive. Now that you're alive, what can you do to make sure you have the best experience possible? It's counterintuitive, but it's reprogramming your subconscious mind to the best of your ability.
see it. I'm trying to like. That's such a funny like way of looking at it.
Yeah, your brain can still look for what's wrong, but you don't have to have the negative feelings attached to it. I can walk into a venue and feel like, okay, this doesn't feel good. It's not my subconscious, that's my intuition saying this doesn't feel good. Leave. Your subconscious mind is saying, watch out for that pothole. And you driving. Oh, it's a person right there. It's getting dark. You should turn the lights on. It's looking for things that can be wrong. But me suffering is different. Looking for something that's wrong doesn't necessarily lead to suffering. Unless I make conscious decisions that may seem like they're supporting my subconscious mind, but they're not. If I see my subconscious mind is looking for something that's wrong, and my conscious mind processes that and says, makes up a story that it can attach to that thing that's quote unquote wrong, and then continuously reinforces that story, then it becomes cemented into my subconscious mind in a way that becomes harder to break down. My subconscious mind is looking for everything that's wrong, but understanding that everything is not wrong, I have a different experience.
One more quote but I'm paraphrasing, and then we can move to a different subject. And it is it's talking about like how you perceive things. It's like never attribute people's actions as antisocial, which you can also attribute to incompetence. Meaning if someone doesn't, for instance, cut you off or is not aware of like your presence and does something, you automatically, as people like to say, like, oh, he's such like an antisocial person, or he's rude. But sometimes they were just so much in their head because things were just happening in their life that they didn't even couldn't pay in mind.
Mm-hmm.
So never attribute certain things to, not never, but don't always trying to attribute things to antisocial behavior, which you can also attribute to incompetence.
I know what you're referencing. Yes, you can take that from me. But really the topic was about, in addition to that, how having a negative outlook on life could change your experience, even though the actual circumstances don't change.
Yeah, I think that kind of boils down to like how you perceive things.
You know, that boils down to a person having a negative outlook. Negative outlook is what determines how you perceive things. If I was walking outside and someone waved at me, right? But I was so in my own head that I didn't notice that they waved at me until it was too late for me to respond in a way that they probably would have liked. and they felt a negative feeling because of that, perhaps they have a negative outlook, not necessarily in life, but attached to that situation. Because me having a positive outlook, when that happened, I was able to process, or I was able to pull some gain from it. I was able to pull some wisdom from it and say, wow, I remember all the times that I had a negative outlook on life. And had I been the guy in that car, I would have come up with all types of reasons to justify that having been a negative experience. But in the moment of positivity, in the moment of having a positive outlook on life, and doing the things that were necessary to reinforce that positive outlook.
But what now that you can rationalize what happens, but the emotion is still negative?
So, okay, if the situation, okay, that's different. So if something happens and my emotion is negative, even if I have a positive outlook on it, that doesn't happen. If you truly have a positive outlook on it, you're trying to have a positive outlook on it, then yes, that will happen.
Well, you gotta try, right?
No. You prime yourself to have a positive perspective on life based on your positive outlook. So it's not a conscious decision in every moment of every day. Right? That's why reprogramming your subconscious is important, because that's what determines 95% of your actions throughout the day. That's priming yourself. That's the reason for reprogramming your subconscious. It's to prime yourself.
And so you do that by constantly questioning your thoughts.
You do that by standing guard at the gate of your life, by paying attention to what you consume and your self-talk. But that's after that's in addition to other things that you're doing to reprogram your subconscious.
So let's say you were coaching someone.
Mm-hmm.
How would you assist them with reprogramming their subconscious in order for them not to feel like they're trying to be positive,
Mm-hmm.
but they actually have a positive outlook?
How do I coach someone toward having a positive outlook in their lives? One, by informing them of the work that they could potentially do to have a positive outlook in their lives. But also having conversations about very specific situations that highlight the intrinsic value that they have and what they actually bring to society that is positive and worthy of celebration. Because we can only build on success. So you can see the positive in you, see the positive in your contribution and how that made the world a better place, even if it was just for a moment. You can see somebody else's. And if there's enough of those positive contributions, then it should also be enough positive experiences waiting for you to happen. There should be enough positive circumstances created in life for us to experience. That doesn't change the emotion, but the emotion may be attached to something that's beyond coaching. Coaches are not therapists. So if a person really has like a mental issue, like depression, for example. That's not something you coach someone out of.
So would you recommend people then to do coaching and therapy in that situation?
Definitely. The therapy will help the person with their depression. The coaching will help them replace the negative thoughts with positive ones, so that they can actually create positive circumstances in their lives. But EDMR, for example, is not a coaching tactic. It's a psychological, therapeutic tactic or strategy or methodology used to help someone reprogram their subconscious mind.
And then, how important is doing shadow work for that process?
Extremely important. That's something that a coach can help you with. A coach can definitely help someone with shadow work. But that's different from helping someone who has been suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder and is now seeking assistance. There's a difference between having a shift in mindset and having a real medical condition that needs to be catered to.
Sometimes I go through a change, or like something happens where I'm like, I feel such a strong emotion, like, oh, I'm gonna do this from now on. It's almost sometimes you watch like a movie and you feel like you and the main character like aligned, and you're like, this is my life now.
Yeah.
But then like 2 weeks later, you back to the same you.
Yeah.
I don't know, and I know the movie's kind of like a silly example, but you go through something, you gain like a certain perspective, a new piece of knowledge, information, and you're like, oh my god, like this is gonna change so much. But then like 2 weeks after, like you're just, like the same.
Yeah. Lack of self-control. Lack of creating an environment where you can take that understanding that you now have and implement it in your life in a way that will change your life and change your identity. You didn't exercise any form of action immediately after the inception of that thought, or immediately after making a decision to implement this into your life. You didn't do anything to move you forward in that direction. You just said, oh, this is dope, I'm gonna do this from now on. Did you schedule it? Before that, did you understand why you were gonna do that? Right. Did you say, okay, this resonates with me because of this? This is what this means to me. This is why I'm going to incorporate this into my life. This is how I'm going to incorporate this into my life. This is when I'm going to incorporate this into my life. This is how often I'm going to incorporate this into my life. And then do it. Otherwise, your subconscious takes over. Because you provide too much idle time in your mind, or too much idle space in your mind for change. If there's idle space in your mind, your subconscious takes over and does what it's been programmed to do.
Just out of curiosity, is there any benefit you think of waking up early?
It depends on the person, and it depends on what you're doing when you wake up. It depends on how consistently you're going to do that.
Every day.
If you do, you have a compelling reason to get up early. Just getting up early to get up early, that doesn't really do anything. If you're getting up early with no purpose, it's like, why? Unless you're trying to build discipline. I don't get up every day at 5 o'clock in the morning. Why? Because for the past 20 years, I've been telling myself I'm not a morning person. And I want to change my ways. So waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning, I may not have an idea as to what I'm going to do right now, but I know I'm going to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning. And from that point, I can decide what I'm going to do. But I'm changing my identity, and I'm starting with the fact that I've been telling myself that I'm not a morning person. From now on, I'm a morning person, and I'm going to prove it to myself. Not because I have anything to do in the morning, but because I want to change my identity. And the reason why I want to change my identity is because I understand that I'm going down a negative path. And I'm going down a negative path because I have adopted an identity that is not mine. And I know it's not mine because intuitively I feel that I'm not aligned. So I want to start being more disciplined, and I want to start conditioning my mind and my body to do what I say we're doing. And the way to do that is to put myself in uncomfortable situations purposely. So I prime my mind to do uncomfortable things. Because the only reason they're uncomfortable is because I told myself that I'm not the kind of person to do this. Because if this was consistent with my identity, it would be natural for me. And I want to change my identity.
Does thoughts change your identity or action?
Action comes from thoughts.
And not the other way around?
No. The origin of action is thought. Now, once you act in that way, you can think about that action and then act another way. It can build on itself. But the first step is thought.
How do you, in a day and age of so much, like, you're being bombarded by so much media, TV, billboards, movies, social media, especially social media. Stand guard of what you consume.
By understanding that you would not bear witness to anything in social media, in films, in music, in marketing, or any type of other advertisement without choosing to engage in it. Social media exists, yes, just like the liquor store on the corner exists. I can't blame social media because I logged into social media. I made the choice to log in. So I can't now say that social media is so distracting. I chose to be distracted by logging in to the social media website. I was looking for distraction. Unlike unless I logged in with the intention of seeing something specific and kept my mind focused on seeing that very particular thing. Just like if I walk outside and I pass the liquor store on the corner and I choose to walk into the liquor store, I can't blame anyone or anything other than myself. Alcohol being available to me doesn't mean that I have to consume it. Something being a distraction being available to me, or circumstance being available to distract me, doesn't mean that I have to give it my attention. That's a choice that I make.
Sometimes you hear that if you want to like really make a big step into your life, you gotta kind of disappear for a while.
Yeah.
How much do you share in that sentiment?
I understand it. I support the concept. It really depends on how much discipline you have. To some extent. Because the distractions are going to be available to you. At the end of the day, it's on you to make the decision. Instagram is available. Are you going to have that app on your phone? Just because I don't want, again, the alcohol doesn't mean that the liquor store is going to close. You're still going to be confronted with the fact that liquor is available to you. But it also takes discipline to change your environment and go into an environment where there aren't liquor stores on the corner, where they're not selling alcohol at the local supermarket. No, you shouldn't probably download the Instagram app on your phone. If you can't handle that, then maybe you shouldn't have a phone. Go get a Nokia. The old school Nokia that didn't have any apps on it. Go ahead. Tell your family and friends that you got some work to do. You'll be fine. You'll get in contact with them periodically. You're going to step away from your phone for a while. It depends on how much whatever it is you're saying you want to do matters to you, ultimately. To some people that may be perceived as unreasonable. But unreasonable people run the world. Unreasonable people run the world because unreasonable people run themselves. They control themselves. Which is not unreasonable. Because really that's the only thing you can control. It's unreasonable not to control the only thing you can control. It makes sense why some people would opt out. But it's still unreasonable.
In what ways can you best exercise discipline in your life?
That depends on the circumstance. Coming up with a compelling reason. Third is to understand in which way are you going to be disciplined. Fourth is to schedule it. Fifth is to do it. repeatedly. Sometimes the goals is like, I want to lose 100 pounds. That's why I'm going to go to the gym. A goal could also be, I want to be consistent. I want to go to the gym 4 days out the week for the next 6 months. And do an hour of walking on the treadmill. Both of those are goals, but which one is more impactful? That's up to the person. Because you can walk on the treadmill, and if you're not looking for any specific result, some would say, is that really a goal? At what speed are you going to walk on the treadmill? Are you going to walk on an incline? Like, what are you walking on the treadmill for? Some would say, I made it to the treadmill 4 days a week for 6 months.
It's about how do you choose if you have not been able to succeed yet in life, and you have yet to accomplish anything, and you have yet to be able to really provide for yourself. How do you choose a life partner? How do you go about that?
You don't.
Then how do you go about, should you even consider dating at this point? Because you also don't want to, I assume, not date for all these years that you're working.
You can date to have fun until you realize how much of a distraction that is. Then chances are you stop dating. At least for a short period of time. Until you align yourself with the goals that you have for yourself. And you begin to make some serious strides toward actually attaining them. Or accomplishing those goals. The more momentum, typically speaking, the more momentum that you get toward accomplishing those goals, the less you may actually even care about dating. Or the more strategic you'll become in regard to dating. And it's no longer about all of the superficial things. It's more so about finding someone who aligns with your vision and thus contributes to your life in a real way. And whose life you can contribute to in a real way. And it's less about, let's go to the club because that's where the pretty girls are. Because the criteria goes beyond being pretty at a certain point. Until you have a real goal for yourself, not necessarily a goal for your life, until you being in your early to mid 20s, even 30s, may not really have a goal for your life. You may have a current goal that you're going for, but that's not necessarily the goal for your life. And that's okay. You don't have to have that at such a young age. You're still young at 35. But have a goal. Doesn't have to be the goal for your life, but have a goal. and start propelling yourself toward that goal. And the less distractions, the better.
So it's kind of like do it until you find out you don't want to do it.
No, it's you probably shouldn't be looking for something serious if you haven't found yourself yet. If you don't have any goals, if you haven't established yourself in any shape, form, or fashion, you probably shouldn't be looking for a life partner. You can still have fun, but you're not looking for a life partner. You can date, but you're not looking for a life partner. That means you're dating, but you're looking for something more casual. The more you figure out about yourself, chances are the less you're going to be interested in something casual. At least not as much as you probably were when you didn't have a plan for your life. Because you weren't working on anything. You didn't have anything to reserve your energy for. You didn't have anything that was occupying a majority of space in your mind other than dating.
Yeah, I think that kind of answers the question. I don't think I have a lot more on that topic.
It's fine. You didn't need it. We could talk about whatever you want to talk about.
Right. No, it's more like it's kind of, you kind of answered it all.
All the questions you have.
Yeah, like, no, like anything further in depth about that is not really much.
Great.
Else.
You get it though.
Yeah.
Are you sure?
I am, well, we'll find out. This is what I understand. In the beginning, I said like it's the Bible.
There was darkness.
Well, you are kind of in the dark.
Yeah.
Really. You have very little knowledge of self.
Yes.
And you haven't found the goal. You might have goals just for like
Yes.
anything can be considered a goal, really.
Mm-hmm.
So you might have things you want to accomplish, but you don't have really a goal yet.
Mm-hmm.
So to that time, it's best to not dedicate yourself to one individual as a life partner, but instead allocate more time and energy towards finding yourself. And along the journey, you'll find that you're not even going to be interested in casually dating, because that's going to occupy too much headspace, consume too much energy that can be occupied for things much greater.
But you're still dating.
Who?
You. As a person.
Right.
Right? That person who's trying to find themselves, which is something that everybody is doing,
Mm-hmm.
is still dating. Because you only learn about yourself in connection with others. You can call yourself a nice person, but how do you know? No one knows you. You haven't exercised being a nice person to anyone. You can say you're loyal, but you have no one to be loyal to. Right? dating is part of how you find yourself, because it's another form of interacting with other people. Right? It's how far you're going to take it. And that determines, that's based on how intense your pursuit for self is. Do you have a job? Meaning, okay, do you have a plan, or are you currently in position to call yourself financially stable, or financially free, or financially independent? Whatever your goal is. What about your health? What about your relationship with the people that are most important to you, your family, for example? Everybody's family is not, but just giving an example here. Do you know how you're allocating your time? That goes back to your goals. What are you going for in your life? What's your mission? What are you going for right now? You have a plan for the next 3 years, even. Doesn't have to be your whole life. Right? You may not know what you want to do 30 years from now. You may not know how what you're doing right now contributes to your life 30 years from now. But do you have a plan for the next 3 years? Do you have a goal that you're chasing right now? And not a surface level goal. A real goal, meaning a goal that is large enough to scare you, but not too large where you feel like it's unattainable. You want to feel challenged by the goal that you have. And are you working toward that? If you are, if you're doing all of those things, you have less time for dating. Like something serious. Does that make sense? So, that's what I'm saying. Keep it casual, still do it. If you don't have any mission, or if you don't know yourself, if you don't know where you're going, if you don't, spend your time trying to figure that out. Once you figure that out, you'll realize you have less time to be playing games dating. So you won't really care about doing anything casually for the most part, at least not to the extent in which you once did. And life doesn't stop because you're looking for your goal or you're looking for yourself. Meaning time is still progressing. You're changing. Person looks up in their 30 is different from when they looked up when they were 25, hopefully. You look up and you're 35, it changes from when you looked up and you were 30, hopefully. Of course, you're changing, you're shifting, you have new goals and all these different things. Life is not stopping for your goal. If you acquired it or if you didn't, life didn't stop. So if you have a certain amount of time allocated to your day, like everyone does, 24 hours, how are you going to utilize that time? The more you focus on building your life, the less you have for frivolous activity. probably want to figure out your goals before you start thinking about girls or dating or looking for a life partner.
And once you find your goals, what if you find your goal but you haven't accomplished them yet?
That's fine. You don't have to accomplish them yet. Sometimes the goal is big. Sometimes it takes 20 years to accomplish the goal. So I'm not saying stay single for 20 years until you accomplish the goal. I'm saying if you really have a goal that is that compelling, chances are you won't have an interest in dating frivolously. You have an interest with dating with the intention of finding a life partner, even if it's on a subconscious level. Because you don't have an interest, you don't have time. You want to align with someone who's going to contribute to your life. You want to align with someone who's going to add to your future. Typically. Which is why if we look at the men who are most successful in society, they're married. And they've been married for a long time. So, at least, during at least for a large portion of their success. We have some divorces that we've seen, yes. Some things didn't work out, yes. Sometimes it doesn't work out. Not saying that it always does. I'm saying that those people were committed to one person for an extended period of time. And that contributed to them actually achieving their goals. The lack of distraction.
Why do you think people distract themselves?
Fear. Fear of confronting yourself so you don't know your purpose. Or fear that you can't fulfill your purpose. Fear of the power that you know you have. So you shy away from it. That can show up in a lot of ways. Men who are focused, for example, for an extended period of time, they can see the benefit of the focus. Let's say men who are focused in one particular area of their lives for an extended period of time. They can see the power of that. They can see the impact. Let's say you go to the gym 5 days a week, 6 days a week for 10 years straight. You have a balanced diet, you sleep well, you do everything that you possibly can to keep your stress levels low, and you have a solid training regimen. You will see substantial benefits in that 10-year period. Imagine if you applied that same discipline to other aspects of your life. And imagine if you've seen the same results, if you could see the same results that you saw in your physical body with the other aspects of your life. That's scary to some people. Some people say they want to be up, but they can't handle the view. They can't handle the altitude. It's just something that sounds good. it's, I don't know my purpose. Have you asked yourself? Have you really confronted yourself? To figure out what your purpose is. And if you couldn't figure out what your purpose was, have you allowed your curiosity to lead you to something you're passionate about, and allow that thing that you're passionate about to speak to you in a way that tells you whether or not it's your purpose? Have you allowed yourself to be vulnerable enough to really give your intuition a chance? Or is your ego too loud? That's the case with a lot of boys. Their ego is too loud to hear their intuition. They're too busy trying to be cool than to really get to the answers, to really get to the heart of things. They want to look like they have the answer. They want to look rich. But even if they have the money, what's the point of having money if that's all you have? So fear of the unknown, being successful, never having had been successful. You know what it's like to want to be successful. That's safe ground. But to actually become successful is a different thing. To knock the fear of confronting yourself and figuring out you're not who you thought you were, or you're exactly who you thought you were. Some people want to be wrong about themselves. These things can lead to distraction. But it all comes back to fear.
Do you think it's important to be really passionate about the thing that you want to do? Maybe something, I guess there's something in your life that's like your purpose, that like you're really good at, but you're not very passionate about it.
And don't do that. Not long term, at least. You can do it short term. Right? Or you can do it part time. But do things that feed you. That's what's going to make your life feel worth it. Not just something that you're good at that you don't really care about. That doesn't make you feel alive. It makes you feel alive with the things you do care about, whether you're good at them or not. At least initially. You do it long enough, at least you'll get better. And getting better at something that you're passionate about actually feels like progress.
Why do you think people travel so much when they are in pursuit of themselves? And would you recommend travel as a way to, in your pursuit of knowledge of self?
Yes. I think people travel when they're in pursuit of themselves because they're in pursuit of themselves. Let me say that again. I think people travel when they're in pursuit of themselves because they're in pursuit of themselves. They have to learn. And they don't think that their current or the current form of education that the environment provides is suitable for them to actually figure out who they are. So they change their environment. They start looking for other ways in which people do things and trying to employ those ways in their own lives to see if it actually gives them what they're looking for. There's a danger to that also. You can just become a piece of everywhere you've been. And like manufacture your identity. Not actually be who you are.
You mean like trying to fit in everywhere you go?
No, I mean, if you go to the United States, you take a piece of that, you take a piece of Canada, you take a piece of India, you take a piece of China, and you blend it and make it this one thing and say, this is who I am. It's not really who you are, that's what you've experienced. That's not who you are. But in an attempt to justify the travel that you've done in pursuit of who you are, you say it's who you are. But it's not.
How can you be wary of that?
Be conscious of it. You need to be wary. Just be conscious.
What is mid-20s for, you think? What's the best like investment for your time, bang for your buck? School, travel, entrepreneurship, starting to really in the workforce, be creative.
Entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is the best bang for your buck in your 20s. Because you don't have any, typically, or at least nowadays, people in their 20s don't really have any serious obligation other than to themselves. There's a decade where you can experiment. You're old enough to experiment and young enough to bounce back from most of the consequences that can come along with that experimentation. Give it a shot, I would say. And the lessons that you learn there will be useful in just about every aspect of life. Because entrepreneurship just reveals the world to you and you to the world, but also you to you. So, in your mid-20s, it's all about experimentation, putting yourself in position to learn who you are, what you have to contribute to this world.
What are some other ways to do that?
Everything does that. Nothing quite like entrepreneurship. Because that's something that you give everything to. You pretty much throw yourself into that completely. It's all consuming. The only thing connected to that, well, not connected to, but I would imagine as close to that as having a child. A lot of people actually compare their businesses to what it's like to be a parent. They have 2 children, they say their business is their 3rd child. So that's what it feels like to them.
For me, what kind of is like the kind of counteracts that is like at 25 you have no money.
You can. You can have money at 25 because you have time at 25.
Well, you have time, but you don't have.
If you have time, you can make money because you can create value. And you can you can do a lot of things with no money. You can do a lot of things with no money.
Right.
It depends on the business. But there are a lot of guerrilla marketing tactics that you can use with no money. There's something that you're good at right now that you don't have to pay for. You can just start marketing it right now. For free. Social media is free. At least it doesn't cost money on the surface. You can do that right now. Don't need a whole bunch of money. You can start providing a service before you even have a legitimate business. You can say, I'm gonna just start with the service, see if it works, see if it's even worth the hassle of opening a real business. Meaning opening a legal entity doesn't mean actually opening a brick and mortar location. You don't need money. There's a lot of things you can do for free. And that's part of being an entrepreneur, being resourceful. Not just using the money because you have it, but doing everything that you possibly can without money. And then putting some money behind it. That's typically what the greatest entrepreneurs do. They're not just throwing their money away because they can. Or because they have a lot of it. And being as resourceful as they possibly can. So, those same tactics that we see all of the greats use, we can use too. Of course, it'll be at a lower level, but you can still use it. What works is what works. Doesn't matter what level you do it at. With most business principles. There are some that don't apply to everything. Or everyone. Entrepreneurship.
What would be then the best bet? Do something you're good at, or do something that do your research and see what the market is like the biggest gaps at?
Both. Where are the biggest gaps? Are you good at those things? Which one are you best at? Go with that one.
How long should you wait for in order to business to succeed before you think like, nah, this is not for me?
Depends on what you seek for business.
Profitable business where you can hire at least 1 or 2 other people.
I think you can do that with most businesses. But if you really for example, Lululemon, I think it took like 7 years to get off the ground. Airbnb took them 8 years to get off the ground. So, it depends. It depends on your stamina. Oftentimes, that's the biggest factor in whether or not someone is going to be successful or not. Do they have the stamina? It's a marathon. Can you keep going? And if you can, the chance of you not being successful is very slim. If you have a good idea, if you have the right people around you, if you created a solid culture, if you actually are proficient at something, if you have the right identity, or at least the identity that aligns with what it is that you're trying to do. That's the right identity. The chance of you not being successful is very small, if you have the stamina. If you don't, then oftentimes that's the deciding factor. Most podcasts don't reach their 50th episode. Don't understand.
So I would also like to someone like Russ.
Stamina.
It's like 11 mixtapes. And then boom, platinum album.
But also still going. The same philosophy. Still exercising the same philosophy. One song a week. It's been a while. It's been years. So, with the goal of making $1 million a month. He's tracking well. Literally.
Have you read his book?
No, not yet.
It's called It's All in the Mind. And he talks about like the importance of at one point making the decision, like this is what I'm gonna do.
Facts.
It's like it doesn't matter how long it takes. From now on, I identify as a producer or an artist or a rapper.
Facts. There you go. There you go.
I mean, that's what I did. I was like, from now on, I'm a producer, but it ain't changed that much from in my life. I'm still producing, but
Did you mean it? Because you're super talented. But not just at producing. You're also a talented videographer. You were probably talented at a lot. You would probably have talent at a lot of other things. But what have you done? Like the person that says, "Well, I'm not good at math." No shit. You never studied. But what I see you do, what I see you commit to, you do well at. Maybe you actually haven't committed, and that's why it hasn't changed anything. Maybe you haven't really committed to anything. Do a lot of busy work, but maybe you're not actually committed to anything.
what is the difference? Why would you say that? What's the main? Yeah. What's the difference between being busy with something and committing to something?
Being busy with something doesn't make you productive at it. does, it gets you closer to whatever the result is. Is it moving a needle in your life? If it is, that's productive. If it's not, it's just busy. Are you committed to something? This is what I'm doing. This is what I'm doing every day from this time to this time, every day. This is the output every day. But it's easier to do that when you have something in mind, and you have a compelling future that you're working toward. Russ knew what he was working toward. Even after having platinum albums and etc., even after already being a millionaire, he said, I'm gonna make $1 million a month from home. That was what he was working toward. I love music and all of those different things, but I am a businessman. Not only an artist, not only a producer, not only a rapper. This is the kind of fruit that I want from my labor. This is what's driving me now. He had to set up a new goal. He reached over old ones. Being known, being platinum, being rich, and still being himself. He did that. How can you take that concept and do it in your life? That's the goal. Because that's not new. That's not unique to us. Russ is not the only person that said, hey, I identify as this is what I'm doing. Doesn't matter how long it takes, I'm gonna get there. Russ understood that's what it took, because success leaves clues. You find someone else who's done something amazing, and you model their behavior. That's it.
How important do you think environment is in all this? As far as like, I have my goal now. B, do you then seclude yourself, or do you surround yourself, or do you?
You seclude yourself and you surround yourself with people who support your ideas once you've decided what you want to do.
What if the people that you are close with, that you're dependent on they depend on you, don't support your idea?
If they depend on you, then you take care of your responsibilities. You can surround yourself with other people and still take care of your responsibility by putting yourself in an environment where people do believe in you, where people do encourage you, where people do see the vision. Align yourself with those people without neglecting your responsibility. Because it's not everybody else's job to see your vision. It's your job to see your vision and align yourself accordingly with that vision. And part of that alignment is surrounding yourself with people who can help propel you toward that goal based on that vision. But you can do that without neglecting your responsibilities. Make sure the majority of your time is spent in an environment that serves you. Now, if someone is responsible for you, it depends on the situation. I'm not sure what that means exactly.
Maybe, let's say you're in college, and you want to do something else, but your parents don't approve.
and they're paying for your college.
You live with them. So they, yeah.
That's fine. You can live with them. Doesn't mean you have to study what they want you to study in college. Some people feel compelled to study what their parents want them to study because they know that their parent, or at least they think that their parent has the best intention for them. And to some extent that's true. But you're also, what's also true is your parent having the best intentions for, or a better way to say this is, your parent wanting what's best for themselves. They want to feel comforted by your decisions. They want to feel like your future is bright. They want to feel like you're safe. It's not really about you in that regard. Right? Of course, you being safe helps you. But no one is really to say if you're going to be safe or not.
Do you think in this whole journey of self-improvement, coaching, how much does the physical, the looks, affect your life?
Looks affect everybody's lives. It affects your life in the same way that anything else does. So if people believe you to be attractive, they're much more likely to be attracted to you in every shape, form, or fashion. But essentially, they're much more likely to give you a chance and much more likely to be interested in spending their time with you. There are also studies that suggest that people who are believed to be more attractive are deemed to be better people, nicer, smarter, kinder, etc. So on a subconscious level, again, before you speak, you've already spoken. So perhaps it makes sense to do our best to make the best statement possible, physically.
If you were to coach someone, what would be some steps that you can guide them through in order to achieve that?
Think about who they are. Think about who they want to be. Think about if that's true to them, meaning is it sincere? When I say who you are, it's how you're showing up in the world, not who you really are internally. And when I say that there's a gap, I mean, what is the gap between how you're showing up in the world and who you are internally? When I say who you want to be, I mean, do you want to be that person that you are internally? Meaning, do you want the person you are internally to match the person that you show up as in the world? How do you fill that gap? One of the ways to fill that gap is to present yourself as the person you say you want to be. Are you doing that? If you're not doing that, what can we do to get you closer to doing that? What are the limiting beliefs that you have that keep you from doing that? And hopefully we can break those limiting beliefs down. One, to show that they're not true. 2, to show that you can change them. And 3, to hopefully help you establish new beliefs that allow you to show up as a person that you want to be, which essentially is the person that you are, but you've given yourself excuses not to show up as due to fear. And that's important because you want to show up in a way that feels real to you, that feels natural to you, as opposed to pretending.
Can you give an example of what someone wants to be and how would that manifest, like, physically?
Sure. If you say you want to be a CEO of a Fortune 500 organization, in which industry do you want to do that in? Let's say you want to do that in banking, but you don't like wearing suits. What's the chances of you being a Fortune 500 CEO in banking if you don't like wearing suits? Now, why don't you like wearing suits? I don't like wearing suits because I feel like it's stifling. I feel like someone else is controlling me. It's kind of corny. Everybody wears a suit. I want to have my own identity. I don't want to feel like I'm wearing a uniform. I'm not trying to blend in. All limiting beliefs that keep a person from putting a suit on. Where does this limiting belief come from? Feeling like if they blend in, they don't have an identity. And if they don't have an identity, they don't stand out. And if they don't stand out, they disappear in the crowd. If they disappear in the crowd, they don't matter. They want to feel like they matter. They want people to understand, see, and acknowledge the contribution that they are making. Is your contribution defined by your clothing? Chances are it isn't. So that means you can make a contribution, the same contribution you're interested in making now, in a suit. I don't want to wear a uniform. Not wanting to wear a uniform is another limiting belief. So the question becomes, why don't you want to wear a uniform? Are you not a team player? Wearing a uniform is part of how we identify what team you play for. That's all it means. Do you play for this team? Do you want to lead this team? Do you take pride in doing that? Yes. So why would you not want to wear the uniform? And there's still some individuality here because you can wear whatever color uniform you want. Or at least you can wear multiple colors. Not any. But a multitude of different ones. There's some variety there. So there's some room for your personality. Some people want to have long hair. Okay. Some men want to have long hair. Okay. Is that consistent with who you say you want to be? Can you see yourself as a CEO with long hair? Yeah, great, and keep it. Especially if you're doing everything else. What does your hair matter? Does a CEO have a neat hairdo? Or a messy one? Neat. Typically, if you want to be in banking. Okay. Well, just make sure your hair is neat. Does this person look healthy? Make sure you're healthy.
Now, what happens if a company wants you to get rid of some of your identity that is derived from your heritage, like a certain hairstyle, or
Are you defined by that hairstyle? Are you still the same person of the same place, interested in the same customs, sharing the same culture, even though you don't have that particular hairstyle? Does giving that hairstyle align with who you want to be? And if it does, then why not give it up? But only if it aligns with who you want to be internally. Not, I want to be a CEO or I want to be a director. And that's why you're giving it up. But are you a director? Do you identify as a director? Do you identify as a director of this organization? Does that person have this hairstyle? Yes, where you from? If you want to just remain that person from that block, okay, yeah, keep that hairstyle. A person who has a hairstyle on that block they're on that block. From that block doesn't mean you should. If you're from that block, that's one thing. If you're on that block, that's a different thing. If you're on that block, okay, keep the hairstyle. If you're from that block, you don't necessarily need to keep that hairstyle. But you don't lose the lessons and connections that you have from that block just because you changed the hairstyle. But as long as you identify as a person that's on that block, chances are you'll align yourself with certain circumstances and make certain choices that encourage you to be back on that block with that hairstyle.
I heard Kevin Samuels say one time, it was like, a lot of black men have trouble in corporate finance or like the corporate world because they don't want to cut their locks.
That's a fact. That is a fact.
And then they say like, yo, we don't want to be sellouts. And he said like, you're not selling out, you're buying in.
Mm-hmm.
Is that kind of in line with what you were just saying?
No. Because you can be buying into someone else's system that's not consistent with who you are.
Can you elaborate?
If you're cutting your hair for the job only, you're selling out. If you're doing anything for the job only, you're selling out. If you're doing this because this is your identity and you're stepping into that identity in every shape, form, or fashion, then you're not selling out. This might be my culture. I identify as a person who is of this culture. I identify as a person who is from this culture. But is this culture defined by a hairstyle? No. There are plenty of black men, unapologetically black and proud, that don't have locks. You don't need locks to be a proud black man. But if somehow you feel like you do, then maybe that job is not for you. We have plenty of other black men who don't have laws that would happily fill that position, who are actually qualified to do so.